We are so proud to partner with Alliance Defending Freedom and their good work defending Jack. Can we give Alliance Defending Freedom a round of applause? Friends, the Christian tradition is full of leaders who stood strong against government tyranny. Consider Moses and his bold demand to Pharaoh to let my people go. Daniel, who was told to pray only to the king, refused, thrown into the lion's den. God rescued and saved him. Or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who were told to bow down to the government, bow down to the king, refused and thrown into the furnace. God protected them as well. Or strong Queen Esther, who went before her king and demanded an end to the persecution of her people. Or Stephen, with eyes fixed upon the Lord, endured the stones of the religious majority of his day. Or the persecution deaths of Paul, Peter, Andrew, Philip, James, and even the modern persecution era of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. As Christians and as Americans, we honor and celebrate those who stand up to government tyranny. We teach our children these stories. We hope that if they were faced with the decision to honor God or bow down to the government, they would choose to honor God every single time. We want our children to grow up to be just like the saints in the Bible. And with us today are men and women who have the courage to stand for their faith against government tyranny. We want to send a message to the nation that religious freedom and freedom of conscience are critical to the foundation of this country. Men and women like Jack Phillips and Barronelle Stutzman are what make America great. From the opening shots of the American Revolution, we have boldly proclaimed to the world that we will fight against government tyranny, and especially against government tyranny opposed to religious freedom. To our friend Jack, and to all the speakers today who are being persecuted and are bold enough to stand up against government tyranny, I share Mordecai's words to Queen Esther. God has placed you here for just a time as this. Thank you for your boldness. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your commitment to the American principles, and thank you for inspiring a nation to stand strong for religious freedom. I stand with Jack Phillips. Colorado Christian University stands with Jack Phillips. If you stand with Jack Phillips, will you stand right now? Jack, we all stand with you. Jack, we all stand with you. May God bless you in this battle for religious freedom, and may God secure our religious freedom and freedom of conscience rights in America. I'm now proud to introduce the president of Colorado Christian University, Dr. Donald Sweeting.
Either conform or else I will harry you out of this land, or else worse. Those were the words of King James I of England to a delegation of dissenting ministers who came to see him at Hampton Court in 1604. They asked for religious freedom to be faithful to the scriptures. That delegation was received with hostility by the king, who refused to pay respect to private conscience and insisted that they must conform. It was that hostility, along with religious persecution, that drove pilgrims in 1620 and later Puritans to the New England shores of our nation, a commemoration many of us remember this November. These English separatists left for what they called weighty and solid reasons. They wanted religious liberty for themselves. From history, we know that they did not practice this well among themselves. And so Roger Williams left and later founded Rhode Island. He too advocated religious liberty for Baptist, Quaker, Jewish minorities. He too was a staunch advocate of the freedom of conscience. The point is that this nation has always stood not simply for religious liberty, our first freedom, but for freedom of conscience. It has been identified as a core human right, affirmed by our founders, affirmed by the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Fast forward to 2012, when a complaint was filed by the Colorado Civil Rights Commission because a baker named Jack Phillips would not design a cake with messaging that went against his beliefs. The commission's ruling eerily echoed the words of King James, saying, "Either conform or else I will harry you out of business, or worse." The commission's ruling was appealed, and this case has now gone to the U.S. Supreme Court. The mainstream media is billing this as a case where a baker is, quote, discriminating against a gay couple. That soundbite is a distortion of what actually took place, as you'll hear today. For Jack Phillips, who had dedicated his bakery to serving his master, he sold cakes to anyone who walked through the door. But as a Christian, there were some things he would not do. He would not design a cake with messaging that went against his convictions. He would not do cakes that were anti-American or that would disparage people or were lewd or celebrate divorce, etc. Contrary to what you may hear, to what the ACLU has charged, his convictions are not born out of hate. Jack lives by an ethic to love his neighbor no matter who his neighbor is. Freedom of conscience is enshrined, friends, in our founding documents. Freedom of conscience is the foundation of all freedoms. So to put this matter in perspective, let's just change some terms. Imagine an African-American baker who is committed to serving everyone who walks in his door, even white supremacists. But one day a white supremacist asks him to design a cake celebrating white supremacy. And this baker could not do that because it went against his conscience. It would be unthinkable to compel him to do this. Or imagine a Jewish baker who serves all her clients, even the ones she knows are anti-Semitic. But imagine one day one of these clients comes in and asks for a cake designed to celebrate the Holocaust. This goes against her conscience. It would be unthinkable to compel her to do this. Or imagine a liberal feminist baker who is asked to design a cake saying abortion stops a beating heart. Or imagine a Muslim baker who is asked and compelled to design a cake celebrating the Trinity. In each case, this would be unthinkable, just as for me, it's unthinkable to coerce a baker like Jack Phillips, a Christian, to design a cake celebrating something that violates his religious convictions. And it is for these reasons that I stand with Jack today. And I ask all Americans who support the freedom of conscience to do the same and to pray for the Supreme Court of the United States this December as they examine and then decide this case. But it's a strange coincidence that we're having this discussion in a season when we're remembering two historical events. On the one hand, many of us are remembering a transformative leader named Martin Luther who stood for freedom of conscience as well, standing up against an oppressive church tribunal when asked to recant in 1521 at the Imperial Council of Worms. He said, "My conscience is captive to the word of God. I cannot and I will not recant anything, for to do so is to go against conscience, and that's neither right nor safe. God help me." And on the other hand, we're reflecting on those pilgrims who came to our shores motivated in large part by a belief in the freedom of conscience. May we not miss the significance of these two historical moments and the issue before us. The stakes have never been higher for religious liberty and freedom of conscience. Thank you very much.